Swallow, right now. Go on, do it. It takes about a second. Here as what just happened, and you didn't notice a single part of it. Roughly 30 separate muscles fired in a fixed sequence. A flap of cartilage in your throat snapped shut over the entrance to your lungs. Your vocal cords clamped together behind it. Your soft palate lifted to seal off your nose. And for about 3/4 of a second, you stopped breathing. You do this 600 times a day. You have never once been aware of it, and every single time, you are running a procedure that, when it fails, kills you in for minutes. Picture a dinner table, 6 people, somebody is telling a story. And one person at that table is dying. Nobody has noticed. Because here as the thing nobody tells you about choking, it is silent. There is no cough, no gasp. You cannot cough, because coughing requires air, and there is no air. You cannot shout for help, because shouting requires air. So the person just sits there, eyes wide, hands at the throat, and the conversation carries on around them for 8, 10, 12 seconds before anyone looks up. Around 5,000 people die this way every year in the United States alone. Not in war zones, not in accidents, at tables, surrounded by people who loved them and didn't look up in time. And here is what I want you to sit with: no other animal on earth does this. A dog does not choke on its dinner, a horse doesn't. A cat can eat a mouse whole, at speed, without a second thought. They can choke the way you can, because their throats aren't built like yours. So, to questions, what is wrong with your throat? And, because there is always a bill and always a receipt, what did you get in exchange? The answer to the second one is going to be the strangest thing you learned today. And it asks something you are using right now to understand me. But first, the flaw, and it starts somewhere you would never expect. Here is the part that stops people. You were not born able to choke. A newborn baby cannot choke on milk the way you can choke on a steak. It is anatomically almost impossible, and that is not luck. It has design in a newborn. The larynx, the voice box, the gateway to the lungs, sits high. Right up at the back of the nose, so high that it locks up into the nasal passage and forms a sealed tube. Air goes from nose, straight down to lungs. Milk goes around it, on either side, and down to the stomach. To separate roads, no crossing. That is why a baby can suckle and breathe at the same time, continuously, for minutes, without ever coming up for air. Try that with a glass of water, you can you'll drown. Every other mammal keeps that arrangement for life. A horse's larynx stays locked up in the nose forever. It is, functionally, a snorkel. And then, at around 3 months old, yours started to fall. Slowly, over the first couple of years of your life, your larynx slid down your throat, away from the nose, down into your neck, and the moment it left that sealed position, the 2 roads collapsed into one. Now there is a single shared corridor at the back of your throat, and everything goes through it. Air, going down, food, going down, water, saliva, 600 times a day. The air road and the food road no longer run beside each other. They cross at a junction in the dark. With no traffic light, you have a level crossing in your neck, and you have been operating it, blind, several hundred times a day, since you were 2 years old. There is one thing standing between you and disaster, and it is a flap of cartilage about the size of a thumbnail. The epiglottis. It sits above your voice box like a lid. When you swallow, your larynx yanks upward. You can feel this. Put a hand on your throat and swallow. That lurches your airway, physically climbing out of the way. And the epiglottis folds down and covers the whole. Food slides over the top of the closed lid and past. Air is locked out for a moment, then the lid opens and you breathe again. It works. It works about 99.99% of the time. But you swallow 600 times a day to 100,000 times a year. 15 million times in a life. Run any mechanism 15 million times, and the failure rate stops being a decimal. It becomes an appointment. And when it fails, it doesn't hurt, it doesn't warn you. It just goes quiet. Now, this is the obvious question, and it asks the right one. If the crossing is the problem, why not just build to separate tubes? And the answer is the ugliest sentence in biology, because of a decision made by a fish 400 million years ago. Lungs did not evolve as a new organ, lungs evolved as a pouch. A little sac that butted off the wall of the gut, the throat, in an early fish, letting it gulp air at the surface of stagnant water. That asked the origin. Your lungs are a bulge in your food pipe, and once they were there, everything after was built on top. Bigger lungs, a rib cage, a diaphragm, a voice box. But the plumbing never changed. The air passage still branches off the food passage, because that is where it came from. You cannot reroute it now. You would have to demolish the building. This is not a design flaw. This is legacy code. for 100 million years old, undocumented, load-bearing, and running in production right now, in your neck. Except, it can be fixed. Somebody managed it. Whales. A whale's nostril migrated to the top of its head and became a blowhole. And the larynx went with it. In many whales, the airway is completely decoupled from the food pipe. Sealed. Separate. A dolphin can swallow a fish and breathe through the top of its skull, and the two events do not touch. They got the redesign, they got the two roads, we got the level crossing. Which brings us back to the bill, because a body does not usually take on that kind of risk for nothing. When your larynx dropped, it did something else. It lengthened the tube above it. Between your voice box and your lips you now have a long, band-to-part resonating chamber. A column of air you can reshape with your tongue, your jaw, your lips. And the shape you give that column determines the sound that comes out of it. That is how you make vowels. That is why you can say e and ah and oo and hear the difference. A wide vowel space from a long throat. For 50 years, the standard story was clean. The larynx dropped, the throat lengthened, and speech became possible. We traded a safe throat for language. Choking is the price of the sentence you are listening to right now. And here is where I have to be honest, that story is contested. And I am not going to sell it to you as settled, because it isn't. Red deer have a descended larynx, so do koalas, so do several big cats. They drop their voice boxes too, not for language, but to sound bigger and lower than they really are. None of them can speak. And in 2016, researchers ran a study on macaque monkeys, imaging their vocal tracts and modeling the sounds they could physically produce. The conclusion was blunt. The anatomy was ready. A macaque throat could, in principle, produce intelligible speech. What it lacks isn't the tube, it asks the brain, so the neat trade, throat for words, is probably too neat. The descended larynx may have made speech easier or better. Or it may have come along for other reasons entirely, and speech moved in afterwards, like a squatter. What survives the argument is this: the geometry is real, and the risk is real. Your throat is shaped for sound in a way no other primate has, and it is shaped for choking in a way no other primate has. Those two facts live in the same inch of tissue, whatever the reason. So, the last question, for 100 million years, why has nothing corrected it? Same answer as always, and it never gets less bleak. Selection is not interested in your safety. It is interested in whether you reproduce, and the throat is a spectacularly good deal on those terms. It works flawlessly 600 times a day for decades. It only fails at the margins, in infancy, in old age, in the unlucky second. Meanwhile, the benefit, talking, is cashed in every single day of your life from the age of 2. A tiny, occasional, catastrophic risk against an enormous, constant, ordinary reward. Evolution will take that trade every time. It took it for you. It didn't ask. So here is where you actually live. Every time you eat, you route solid matter across the entrance to your own lungs, and you rely on a thumbnail of cartilage to close in time. You've done it 15 million times. It has never once failed you. You have never once thanked it. And in exchange for that daily gamble, you got a longer throat. And in that longer throat, you got vowels. And with vowels you got words. And with words you got everything. Every argument, every apology, every promise, every song, every idea that ever left one human head and arrived in another. Somewhere, a fish gulped air at the surface of a stagnant pond and left you a pipe that goes to the wrong place. You have been paying for it and profiting from it ever since. You are not broken, you are unfinished.